Day 5 of the Russian invasion in Ukraine. Welcome to First Mover, your first global look at today's action in the Bitcoin, blockchain, and digital asset space. I'm your host, Christine Lee, and joining me is my co-host, CoinDesk managing editor of Global Capital Markets, Lawrence Lewitinn. Good morning, Lawrence.
Good morning. How are you?
All right. Checking in on Bitcoin, the CoinDesk Bitcoin price XBX index currently at $38,046. Bitcoin is sinking about 2.6% over the past 24 hours. The CoinDesk Ether price ETX index is at 26.19. ETH is also sliding about 5.7% over the past 24 hours. And the DFX CoinDesk DeFi index at 247, tracking losses about 3.5% for the day. Belarus is hosting the first face-to-face talks between Russian and Ukrainian officials since the war began. It's happening right now. We don't know more than that, other than that they're talking, even as Russian rockets continue to blast Ukrainian cities and inflict civilian casualties, according to Ukrainian officials. Let's go straight to our spotlight guest, Lawrence.
The CoinDesk Spotlight is brought to you by Nexo, the place to earn on Bitcoin, Ethereum, and more.
Global sanctions against the Russian invasion into Ukraine have prompted the international community to block Russian banks from the SWIFT messaging network. Joining us now to discuss is Liat, Shetret, Director of Regulatory Affairs and Compliance Policy at Solidus Labs, a market surveillance and risk monitoring hub. Hello there, Liat. Thanks for joining us. So what are the implications of removing Russian banks from SWIFT, Liat? Will they turn to crypto? Is there any evidence of that?
Good morning, and thank you for having me. So as you can imagine with crypto, there's no real crystal ball as to what might happen with regards to Russia being removed from SWIFT. There has been a lot of discussion around this. Crypto and infrastructure is not yet as mature as we'd like it to be in order for it to take on the entirety of the Russian economy and the bulk of the Russian economy. There are also opportunities for crypto to take over some specific areas with regards to potential for a CBDC direct engagement between what we've seen as the digital ruble and the digital yuan. I would limit the conversation around this particular issue because we haven't quite seen the digital ruble, the central bank digital currency of Russia, be effective outside of the country. The digital yuan has been also very limited within China and very specifically outside particular quarters within China. So this conversation around, is the central bank digital currency going to be the opportunity for Russia to bypass sanctions is not quite there. I think a big issue to remember is that geopolitically, crypto is now center stage in this conversation. This has not been the case before. We really view it as a test for crypto that's really going to affect future growth. It's a dramatic testing moment. We see that governments now have much more in their toolbox that they can do with crypto. And we're really here to say, crypto companies, crypto businesses, we don't want to be misused for sanctions avoidance. There's no reason for the crypto community to be utilized to circumvent sanctions. And governments now have the tools to make sure that doesn't happen.
So, Liat, let's step back for a second and just kind of talk about what's the near-term issues, and that is we have a few banks that are being kicked off of SWIFT. What does that mean in general? What does that mean for Russian banking, and what does it mean also for crypto? This is over the next several weeks. What do we expect here in terms of how people are going to potentially get around some of these sanctions if they can, or how they'll use crypto in this very short term?
Yeah. So what we're already seeing is that there's discussion around preparation for enhanced cyber attacks, an attempt for Russia to fundraise additional funds via ransomware. There is ongoing concern about beefing up cybersecurity around different systems in order to make sure that should Russia decide that there's a need to fundraise because they're unable to obtain the kind of funding that they need, that they would maybe tap into ransomware networks in order to facilitate for that. So I think there's a lot of pressure at the moment on cybersecurity in order to achieve that. We are seeing that from the Ukrainian perspective, there has been a significant usage of people kind of moving their own funds onto crypto wallets in order to make sure that they have opportunities to flee with money, to utilize money, to stay and spend money in different ways in order to protect their own finances.
So according to the Wall Street Journal, Washington is weighing the possibility of imposing further sanctions against Russia by targeting cryptocurrencies. How would that even work if possible?
So we've been following this very closely, as you can imagine. There are a lot of opportunities outside of Russia and Ukraine to impose sanctions against Russian oligarchs against specific targets. And what I'd like to really emphasize here is that there is a standing partnership with crypto businesses that would be willing and able to do that. So along with others, we've created the Crypto Market Integrity Coalition. These are crypto exchanges and crypto businesses who really take a stand to say that their crypto exchanges will not be misused for cashing out. So this is really the pressure point, needing to cash out funding that's being used or being mobilized between crypto exchanges that need to be then converted into cash back in order to be utilized. And what crypto exchanges are actively doing is they're monitoring their transactions. They're seeing where the money has been, where the money is going, trying to assess and create an evidence trail for potential interactions and illicit transaction points that they might have seen or be seeing with maybe specific Russian targets or Russian dark markets, Hydra, for example. So we're trying to trace these and then coming to a point of not allowing those particular transactions to be cashed out. So those can then be frozen. They can be put in escrow. They can be held until further action is assessed. There's a robust compliance function that many crypto businesses are operating on and high alert using blockchain tracing, market surveillance. There's a variety of tools and we're not flying blind. And I think this is very critical to think about the differences between other conflicts where at the moment, crypto businesses are almost partners to governments, eyes and ears on the ground, able to secure the infrastructure to make sure that there's no leakage. And if there are, they're traceable. And I think this is a very big difference from what we've seen in the past when it comes to the misuse of potential crypto for sanctions evasions.
Yeah, Liat, I was going to ask, how are we seeing crypto used? As you mentioned, this is kind of a different conflict than we've seen in the past. And one of the things we've seen, for instance, is, potentially, this use of crypto to fund aspects of this war. What are we seeing exactly in that regards on either side? What's of concern to you?
Yeah, it's been absolutely compelling, devastating, the whole wide gamut of emotions to see what's happening, but also a lot of really important watershed moments for crypto. We're seeing that there's on the Ukrainian side a surge of donors coming in to fund UkraineDAO, which is essentially a centralized pot of money that goes to support Ukrainian aims and Ukrainian goals and objectives. This is something new, bringing in crypto actors, which is a non-state individuals to weigh in, to fund, to crowdfund warfare. This is a new form of geopolitical complexities that we just haven't seen before. We've always talked about sort of the social network kind of interference in elections and things like this, but this is financing, and financing comes with a lot of consequences and opportunities. At the same time that we've been seeing the potential for choke points for Russia, we're seeing the benefits that this is allowing Ukraine in terms of the leeway. We also think that this is helping morale. When you see the amounts of funding and support that's coming in to the country, there's an element of unity that comes where, crypto has a lot of new money, new financiers that have ideological beliefs, and they're putting their money where their mouth is. And those kind of initiatives are quite big. And, we've seen the likes of tech giants coming in to support internet, Elon Musk's Starlink connection. So there's a lot of activity ongoing with tech, with crypto. And we're really starting to see that more and more crypto businesses are also reviewing their sanctions regime and saying, okay, here we see that there might be a potential for weakness. How do we make this more robust? How do we avoid access to darknet shopping? How do we avoid these loopholes? And governments are partnering up with private sector entities to really achieve these goals, which is a newfound public partnership warfare arrangements that we just haven't seen before.
One question I do have, though, with all of that is you do have this public funding of warfare, and as you were describing. However, it could also turn into something pretty scary, potentially, correct? I mean, like what kind of precedents does this set? And how could it potentially turn really ugly in the future. Do you see that as a threat at all?
It could turn ugly. It could be a threat. I'm opting to see it as an opportunity for governments to really step into the light on crypto. Governments at this point in time really have no choice but to wrap their minds around crypto, to have clear policies, clear enforcement capabilities. There's really no opportunities for government at this point in time, seeing the scale of the crypto function that it's playing and what it's doing between Ukraine and Russia. There's simply no way for governments to bury their head in the sand. And we really see that this is an impetus for governments who have been shying away from it, who've been avoiding it, to really, really reckon with what crypto means to their financial industries, to the global cross-border functions, particularly the U.S. as a global financial leader. We continue to see this as an opportunity. And I think that, industry is ready to work with governments to make sure that policies are crisp and clear and compliant and really achieving the goals of just a financial integrity, a global financial integrity system that really makes no space for sanctions, no space for illicit finance. And I think we're all working towards the same goal. And this really sets a precedented opportunity to do that, unfortunately, at a very high cost for Ukraine, at a very high cost for the region. But this is really a tremendous, unprecedented moment that we're seeing right now for crypto.
Liat, I want to bring your attention to the official Twitter account of Ukraine. They've been tweeting, "Stand with the people of Ukraine," now accepting cryptocurrency donations, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and USDT, along with the addresses. Apparently, this has been confirmed by sources verified by Ethereum founder Vitalik Buterin and Ukraine's former ambassador to Austria. So, if Ukraine can accept donations, do we have any sense of, where these funds may be going? And if they can ask for donations, assuming Russia can as well, and could that limit sanctions, the effect that they have?
Yeah, so if you notice here, what's unique with the Ukraine ask is that they're asking funding in Bitcoin and ETH. And that means that they are open for tracing. Bitcoin and ETH are two specific currencies that are on the open ledger. It means that anybody can trace it, can view it, can see where these particular Bitcoins, these particular ETHs have been and when they're going and where they're going. And that makes life easier because you can see how the funds will be used. You can see where they're going, where they're going to be cashed out. And there's a function of traceability. I think the concern sometimes comes when the requests are being made towards privacy coins, which are not traceable. And then you sort of wonder, well, where is this being used? And so this is a clear, transparent approach. I'm very comfortable that it's being asked in BTC and ETH because, again, there's an opportunity to trace the funds and see how they're being used. And it's up to really the Ukrainian government to decide how to do that. It does present, future concerns. We've seen this before around scams. We've seen this with the Twitter hack when there was, multiple leaders, celebrities, Twitter accounts that were replaced with "please donate Bitcoin here," and that was a clear scam. So I think one of the things that I'm watching very closely is opportunists and criminals who will pop up inevitably to try and collate donations, to try and receive contributions, and then misuse those funds and really essentially steal money from those who really have different and good intentions and contributing to an ideological statement that they believe in.
All right, Liat, thank you so much for your analysis. We got to wrap it up there, but that was Solidus Labs Director of Regulatory Affairs and Compliance Policy, Liat Shetret. All right, coming up, crypto markets update with crypto trading platform CrossTower.
We say we want to reimagine money. It turns out we're going to the heart of the matter. Imagination has always been a key part of what money is. Imagination in the form of cultural creativity is also something that the cryptocurrency community has in spades. And to the outsider, that can be a reason to dismiss it as frivolous, as something built on nothing. To dismiss it for these reasons, though, is to ignore that all money is imagined.
All right, let's have a live look at Bitcoin. The CoinDesk Bitcoin price XBX index currently at $38,753. Bitcoin sinking about 0.5% over the past 24 hours. The CoinDesk Ether price ETX index right now at 2675. ETH is also sinking about 3.4%. The DFX CoinDesk DeFi index at 247. DeFi is losing about 3.6% over the past 24 hours.
The Crypto Markets Update is presented by Grayscale, the world's largest digital currency asset manager.
So lots to discuss in the markets, of course, and joining us now to do that is to discuss the crypto markets is Kapil Rathi. He's co-founder and CEO of global trading platform CrossTower. Welcome, Kapil.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah.
Yes, I was just going to say this has been quite a few days in the markets. Have there been any particular surprises with how the crypto markets have reacted with the conflict in Ukraine? Anything where you said, I didn't expect this to happen?
Yeah, I have to say the crypto market, especially Bitcoin, the way it's holding its price level, it's kind of trading in a range bound between 35K to 40K. Over the weekend, as the data started coming about the Russian central bank raising their interest rate up to like almost double it overnight, the ruble actually dropping, we're seeing a sort of investment moving into safe havens like U.S. Treasury. I think Bitcoin is also receiving some of that sort of confidence from the investment community. So overall, like Liat mentioned in this show today, crypto is playing a front and center role in this war, first time, and we're kind of almost seeing the history in the making.
I wonder if you see any regional differences in trading, how trading is happening in North America versus Europe and Asia.
Yeah, going into this Russian war, when the rumors were kind of coming in, we saw a huge selling pressure, especially from Eastern Europe, and that was potentially causing the downward pressure on crypto. And as the news started coming out and the war started unfolding, we saw more Bitcoin buying actually coming from that particular region. So it's and especially with now the donations going into Ukraine, I think this is another interesting example when we have been talking about when there is a humanitarian crisis, moving help from the source to destination takes time. And this is the first time we are seeing the Bitcoin actually is facilitating a timely movement of help from donors to recipients. So overall, I think we'll be seeing sort of kind of movements into the Eastern Europe right now.
Yeah, Kapil, as you were mentioning this, of course, over the past weekend, we saw the devaluation of the Russian ruble by about 25% or so. And there is the potential, of course, people fleeing the ruble to go into Bitcoin, simultaneously people buying Bitcoin to help fund the war effort on behalf of Ukraine. So is it basically that actually the devaluation of the ruble is in many ways helping Ukraine, so to speak, by increasing the value of those donations that are going into Ukraine?
Yeah, I think whenever there is a war, it's the citizens of the country who get impacted most. Of course, there is a huge tragic humanitarian crisis happening in Ukraine. Russian citizens are not immune to this. Now, when they're seeing their ruble prices tanking almost 27, 28% overnight, there is a line at the ATM, there is a run on the banks. So whoever is holding Bitcoin in Russia, and of course in Ukraine, is definitely in a much better position if you were holding the fiat currencies of these countries. Especially for Ukraine, the way we are able to move sort of Bitcoin or ETH as donations. In fact, at CrossTower, last week, we started a program. We quickly mobilized our resources to help charitable organizations to be able to accept crypto as donations. Most of these charitable organizations were not ready for a day like this. So we are, in fact, coming in and helping those charitable organizations. But it is an interesting time we are living in where crypto was meant for citizens, for common men, and we're seeing that as a use case now.
So long term, I mean, as we see the ruble is going to be is basically devalued, it probably will stay there for a while, if not get worse. Do you think that will change adoption in Russia in terms of more interest, more more efforts to buy Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies because of this shock to their financial system. And what are the likes of CrossTower and other financial entities going to play in stopping sanctioned individuals? What kind of protections do you have to stop sanctioned individuals from participating in that?
Right. So the depression in ruble, I think it will continue. I don't think Russia has many friendly countries out there who are willing to buy ruble at this point. So I think when they're not out of woods yet. And it could very well mean that the adoption of crypto overall in the entire world as we come out of this war will increase. For companies like CrossTower, we're playing a very important role that countries like Russia cannot avoid sanctions. We make sure that CrossTower doesn't take any business from Russian government or citizens at this point. But most of the exchanges who are fully compliant, fully KYC, applying KYC rules and AML rules, they need to make sure that there are no funds being used to avoid these sanctions. There are tools in place. We use tools like elliptic cipher trace and chain analysis to monitor these type of transactions. So I think the exchanges who are regulatory compliant are playing a very important role. There are still exchanges out there who don't KYC. And I think this is the time when government sort of going to start looking at exchanges in a much more broader role from a KYC standpoint or crypto in general. I think government has been avoiding it, like Liat mentioned. It's about time that we see this as an important element.
Kapil, just one last question on, what are you seeing in terms of volumes in trading with different coins? Is there one coin trading more than the other? Any interesting trends in that direction?
The volumes are sort of more on a low end compared to where we saw Q4 when the market was very volatile. In terms of specific coins, I think Bitcoin and ETH are still seeing most of the inflow coming in. The sort of kind of macro trends are at the sort of on the mind of traders at this point. We're not seeing much in and out of movement on altcoins at this point.
All right, Kapil, thank you so much. That was CrossTower Co-Founder and CEO Kapil Rathi. Coming up, checking in with CoinDesk Global Policy and Regulation Managing Editor Nick Day. All right, welcome back. Time to check in with CoinDesk Global Policy and Regulation Managing Editor Nick Day, who is also the editor of CoinDesk's The State of Crypto newsletter. Good morning, Nick. All right, do you have an update for us on sanctions?
Good morning. So it's been a pretty busy weekend for regulators around the world. We're now seeing the European Commission and the US, as well as a host of other nations, committing to blocking several of Russia's largest banks out of the SWIFT interbank messaging system. So I think we talked about this last week. SWIFT basically underpins international transactions around the world. And, losing access to that would be a pretty severe blow for any banks that want to do business, outside of their home country. And we're already seeing, kind of side effects of that. Just this morning, the Russian central bank, said that they're going to try and find a way to bypass it. They have their own system, apparently. Details are a bit sparse on that at the moment. We're also seeing regulators around the world seize Russian central bank assets that are held internationally, which could be a pretty severe blow as well. The idea is if the Russian central bank cannot access its own assets, then it'll put a lot of pressure and pain on the financial system in Russia. This is part of a kind of an ongoing and escalating package of sanctions. The U.S. president, as well as the European Commission, announced over the weekend that they will be forming a transatlantic task force to continue looking for and seizing assets And so far we haven't really seen Russia, de-escalate any its attacks or anything like that. We're still seeing shelling of Russian cities, Ukrainian cities, and attacks continue to be ongoing.
So, Nick, not every bank in Russia was kicked off of SWIFT, correct? I mean, it seemed like it was just a handful of banks, 2 or 3. Does that potentially mean that there's a way in which some of the other banks can get around being blocked off of SWIFT if they use let's say a competitor bank for a short term?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is where things kind of get a little bit into the hypothetical, but we actually have precedent here. In 2012, SWIFT cut off certain Iranian banks, and at the time, it wasn't every bank in Iran, and this was the exact same concern expressed at back then, was that individuals or entities could, instead of using a sanctioned bank, could just go across the street, find another bank, and use that instead. This was even asked during a European Commission press briefing yesterday, and the response was that it's impossible to cut off an entire country from SWIFT overnight. So it doesn't sound like they're ruling out expanding the list of banks that are on that are being removed from SWIFT or sanctioned, but it seems like this will be a process rather than a single step.
Nick, just one other thing I want to bring up, and it's a tweet from Elon Musk that has gotten a lot of attention over the weekend. He was writing, Starlink service is now active in Ukraine, more terminals en route, responding to Mikhailo Fedorov, the Vice Prime Minister and Minister of Digital Transformation in Ukraine, asking for this Starlink service. But from my understanding, you would need the terminals, correct? So it's not going to be effective for everyday Ukrainians. And could it potentially also lead to figure, like on the Russian side, if they be able to monitor these Starlink signals, so they'll be able to geolocate people using them? Is that a concern?
Yeah, so definitely both of those are concerns. So the first part, the Starlink is a proprietary network. You need these Starlink terminals to access the network. And so Elon Musk has promised to send terminals, but it's unclear. We don't have specifics yet on how these terminals will be sent or how when they will arrive. And given the whole situation there, it's probably going to take a little bit of time to distribute. So this is a first step. It's again, first step of a process, but as of right now, in and of itself, it isn't any kind of definitive help. And to the second point, satellite phones have been frequently made targets for military forces trying to, for lack of a better way to put this, wanting to take out, individuals or people that they see as targets. And so there's absolutely that risk that, if you have a Starlink terminal that is connecting to a satellite network above you, then, that can be tracked. And if Russia decides it wants to go after population centers or after people that it sees as being online, then that is certainly a risk. I'm not sure if this is something that Elon Musk has already, looked at, or if his team is working on this, but certainly it should be a concern for anyone, in Ukraine who plans to use this. And then, kind of even beyond that, right now, just yesterday, Google announced that it was shutting off certain live tracking features on its Maps program, because you never know what kind of data even your cell phones might be emanating. So this is also kind of just raising a whole specter of, digital privacy questions and, what kind of information they're leaking and how that might be weaponized against you.
Yeah, I did see some chatter on Twitter that if you're in Ukraine, you should turn your geolocator off. All right, Nick, thanks so much for the update. That was CoinDesk Managing Editor of Global Policy and Regulation, Nick Day. Don't forget to sign up for the State of Crypto newsletter on CoinDesk.com. Let's check in with Crypto Twitter for our tweet of the day. This one from You Sleepwalker, a photographer from Kyiv, tweeting, my Ukrainian credit cards don't work anymore. I'm safe physically in Kazakhstan, but all my savings are gone. Crypto is the only money I still have. And today I can say without exaggeration that BTC, ETH, and NFTs are going to save my life while I can't come back home. All right, that's it for...
Well, that's I guess that's the first time we've actually seen, unfortunately, that we've seen a definite use case scenario of crypto the way it was meant to be used. It's certainly a not the white paper Alice and Bob situation of going to a coffee
it's
shop.
It's banking the unbanked. It's doing what it's supposed to do. All right.
Yeah, and in a time like this, definitely needed.
Thank you, Lawrence, for joining me. That's it for First Mover. I'm your host, Christine Lee. Meantime, check out The Hash at noon Eastern and All About Bitcoin at 3 o'clock. You're watching CoinDesk TV. Next up, stay tuned for the daily forecast to see what's happening in the Asia crypto markets.
Things are moving fast in Ukraine, and crypto is responding in suit. It's the first real global test of crypto in a geopolitical crisis. What happens next could very well set the precedent of things to come. History in the making, folks, and we are keeping watch. Welcome to the Daily Forecast, February 28th, 2022. I'm Angie Lau, Editor-in-Chief of Forecast, covering all things blockchain. Well, Ukraine's president says he's spoken with other world leaders on further steps to take against Russia, while the country's vice prime minister has called on crypto exchanges to block Russian users. We're going to take a look at the crypto world's growing role in the situation, plus a whole lot more coming up. Let's get you up to speed from Asia to the world.
Join thousands of NFT traders who already start their day on CryptoSlam.
Let's kick off with moves from the crypto space around Russia's war in Ukraine. First up, Russian soldiers who surrender to Ukraine are being offered a reward in cash or crypto. In an Instagram video, local TV host and honorary ambassador to the United Nations Population Fund, Masha Afrosinina in Ukraine, said surrendering soldiers will receive the equivalent of $60,000 and an amnesty after trial. Afrosinina says the offer comes from the Ministry of Defense in Ukraine, as well as the global IT community. Meanwhile, one of the world's biggest crypto exchange says it is working to comply with sanctions on Russia. Following the invasion of Ukraine, a statement from Binance cited in the media said the exchange has assembled a task force to take action against those that have had sanctions levied against them. Lawmakers in Washington are looking to impose crypto sanctions on Russia that will have minimal impact on the rest of the market, with one expert telling us this.
The U.S. Office of Foreign Assets Control, for example, published already a guidance to encourage exchanges, miners, wallet providers, and practically everyone in the crypto space to implement some form of sanction compliance program. And I believe we might be seeing more and more proactive encouragements from the authorities in this situation.
We're going to have more from Kelvin Lamb on Russian sanctions on tomorrow's show. Meanwhile, Binance is also supporting humanitarian efforts in Ukraine by making a donation of $10 million and setting up a crypto crowdfunding site, the Ukraine Emergency Relief Fund. It had received almost $6 million worth of donations by Monday morning Asia time. Now, the Ukrainian government is also accepting crypto donations to support the military. That, according to blockchain analysis company Elliptic, those were around $12 million by Sunday evening. You can find those stories and more at forecast.news. Over in India, the country's top court has queried the government over the legality of crypto. Local media reports that the Supreme Court has asked for clarification in the wake of surging Bitcoin scams in India. Forecast's Pradeepta Mukherjee reports from Calcutta, India.
While hopes over legalization of cryptocurrencies in India were raised by Nirmala Sitharaman's announcement of a 30% tax on crypto income in February's budget this year, the finance minister has since said that the tax does not mean crypto has been legalized. So just what is the government's stance? A good question, and it's one which the Supreme Court now wants an answer to. Justices D.Y. Chandrachud and Surya Kant asked Additional Solicitor General Aishwarya Bhati for clarification after hearing a matter relating to a Bitcoin scam. The Gain Bitcoin scam is an alleged fraud of 87,000 Bitcoin worth around $2.6 billion. One expert told Forecast there are 3 reasons why ordinary investors are very keen to hear what the government has to say.
1, we do not have specific legislation dealing with this. Second, we've seen the central finance minister impose a tax on cryptocurrencies without an enabling legislation regarding the classification of this sort of trade. And third, because we've seen an overall negative position of the Reserve Bank of India through its pronouncements on cryptocurrency.
Gupta says that clarity on all three of these would clear up confusion over what investors can and cannot do, and that will help the sustainability of the crypto sector in India. For Forecast, I am Pradeepta Mukherjee, Kolkata, India.
Well, in last month's annual letter to CEOs, BlackRock's Larry Fink spoke about the power of stakeholder capitalism, and we're seeing that in play right now. He said that in today's globally interconnected world, companies must create value for their shareholders, and one way of doing could be via tokenization. So why aren't more companies trying it? Well, who better to ask than a passionate advocate for tokenization? We are, of course, talking about Henry Chang, CEO of Fusang. And Fusang aims to reshape investment markets with blockchain technology. It's all about tokenization, isn't it, Henry?
Absolutely. And to enable stakeholder capitalism. We're big fans of that here as well at Team Fusang.
Well, let's talk about that. I mean, you're seeing the opportunity in the space, and now increasingly folks like Larry Fink, institutional legacy folks, also seeing the opportunity. So let's talk about the potential here. What potential does tokenization offer to both companies and stakeholders? And why aren't we seeing more of it?
You know, stakeholder capitalism's been topic du jour for a while now. At the World Economic Forum last year, it was the theme of the entire conference. And I think that more and more people, especially in these times that we're living in, are talking about stakeholder capitalism because we recognize that many of the communities in which we live, the companies that we work for, aren't necessarily always aligned with ourselves as individuals, as participants, stakeholders in these communities. But I think until today, it's been quite hard to actually execute on stakeholder capitalism. When you look at a large public company today, the set of shareholders and the set of consumers are often two very, very different groups of people. So no surprise, there isn't always alignment between them. But with tokenization, being able to open up the pool of all kinds of assets, including companies, to their own stakeholders, I think finally we can get closer to this ideal.
And of course, trust. So what about trust? What do you think is needed to build confidence in the technology behind the types of tokens that can be issued, whether it's a utility or a security, for example? You know, we're talking about those things so that people can feel really comfortable and happy to get on board because they trust it.
Trust in technology is one thing, but I think probably even more important is that we need to start building trust in what I call the asset layer. People can and will look underneath the token and say, what exactly does this represent? And unfortunately, too often in the crypto space, when you dig that one layer deeper, it looks a little bit messy. It is not clear what exactly you're getting, what you're owning, if you're having any legal rights at all over an underlying asset. And I think if we can start to bring online better companies, better asset quality where you have trust in the asset, trust in technology will naturally follow because people will then view technology, as they should, just as the conduit to get access to these exciting investments.
You know, to that point, Henry, you've said before that communities are key to all of this. So how do you create a community that can really help guarantee the success of a tokenization project and really share in that value, as you've said?
By doing exactly what we've been talking about, by turning stakeholders into shareholders. And to me, the best way of actually building these communities and financially incentivizing them for being early adopters is to actually give them upside in the success of the platform itself. Taking a page from the ICO and crypto world in terms of actually delivering utility value to customers and having value capture on that side, but also as Fusang is doing with our own IPO, creating security tokens that represent shares so that people get both the equity and the utility upside, and also enabling companies to do things like launch grant pools, as we've begun to do, creating pools not just of tokens but actually of our own equity, and using that to incentivize investors and issuers, and when they come and add value not only to Fusang as a centralized platform, but when they add value to each other and the network around us, dealing them into owning part of our platform and the network itself.
Henry Chang of Fusang, thanks so much for joining us today. And that's the daily forecast from our vantage point right here in Asia. Well, as crypto defines its role in this regional crisis that has global implications, our team at Forecast will be here. For more, visit forecast.news. I'm Forecast Editor-in-Chief Angie Lau. Until the next time.